Albert Breer, Detroit waking up to this news this morning that Albert Breer is reporting that the Lions are amongst the teams who are looking at moving up. And Breer is speculating that they are looking for an edge opposite of Aiden Hutchinson or perhaps another corner. So I made a prediction last week. It wasn't a shoot the boot guarantee because you don't know if you can find a trade partner. You can try as hard as you want to move around, maneuver on the draft, but if nobody wants what you are offering or nobody wants to give up what you are after, can't really make the deal then, can you? But if they're looking at moving up, okay, let's say they're moving up for an edge player. They'd have to move into the top 10 to get a crack at Dallas Turner, most people believe. Could they be thinking about moving into the teens in case Turner drops? That's the only way I think he's in play here.
I agree with you. I mean, Dallas Turner seems like he's the number one edge rusher in the draft. And,
from Alabama.
Yeah, and there's a lot of speculation that he could go to the Bears or somewhere in that 8 to 10 range, depending on who's there. Is Dallas Turner going to slip? I don't think he slips that much, but Jared Verse might. Jared Verse
from Florida State. There have been multiple mocks that have him getting into the 20s. That doesn't mean he will. Heck, there's no guarantee he'll even. He won't be on the board for the Lions at 29. That seems like it would be a great case scenario. Kid that started his college career at Albany, transferred to Florida State, and just exploded at Florida State. Jared Verse. At one point, I think early in this process, people thought, oh, he's a top 10 guy. As this has gone on, it feels more like 13 to 24-ish, but that's not a move where you have to move up very far if you want to take a crack at Jared Verse if he's still there in the 20s.
Well, this is where we see how adept our ninja really is. You know, if he wants to move up, what are you giving up to move up? And you'll see how much they value those later round picks, because if you're moving up from 29 to 24.
Yep.
If you can get that guy, I don't think you're giving up a whole ton.
Nope.
Maybe it's a fourth round pick,
which they don't have.
Yeah. So maybe it's next year's fourth round pick, or
probably
maybe it's next year's third.
If you
have to go next year, maybe you have to go up
yep.
a little bit. But I don't think they want to give up too much this year, like to give up this year's third.
So the other player that it could be is one of the more mysterious players that is probably disqualified off some people's board. And that is Leu Latu, who started his career at Washington, edge rusher, player that they really liked, but ended up coming down with a neck injury that he did not pass medical clearance, and they said that he had to medically retire. Well, he went and got a second opinion, ended up at UCLA, and has turned himself into a high draft prospect. But with this injury, I don't know, man. A neck is something that I just don't know that you mess around with. Now, at the end of the day, there are doctors. Every team has doctors that clearly will, clear the guy. And UCLA found some that did. Others will say, no, it's not worth the risk. Could they be moving up potentially for Leu Latu?
They could, and we know the Lions don't shy away from drafting guys that have injured histories. So I that's another guy that, like you say, is mocked and well in the first round. So if they're looking at, I don't know what they're looking at. I know Albert Breer said it could be corner, could be edge rusher. Well, it could be defensive tackle, it could be offensive line. You don't know. I mean, if you're throwing it around like that,
that's
really
what his
know.
Speculation is. Yeah. If, in the case of Latu, what's interesting about him, when he committed to Washington, the head coach there was Jimmy Lake. Jimmy Lake is currently the defensive coordinator with the Atlanta Falcons. So the Falcons are sitting there at 8, and they are widely mocked Dallas Turner to them. But Jimmy Lake recruited the guy, but Jimmy Lake was also there when he was deemed medically ineligible. So I don't know how that necessarily works out, but sometimes those ties can come back and dictate where a player ends up. All right, if they're moving up for a corner, and this seems to me like it would be a little bit more likely than edge rusher, who are they after? And it feels like it's probably just two. Quinyon Mitchell, the corner from Toledo, who is widely regarded as a great talent in this draft and has emerged early and has stayed at the top of draft boards. The other one I think it might be is Terrion Arnold from Alabama. And I think there's a third sleeper in there that they could be looking to trade up for.
Well, I do think there's a third sleeper. And do you want to do 1, 2, 3 and say the name?
I want to do 3, 2, 1.
Okay, let's do
it.
it.
All right.
Yep.
3, 2, 1.
Cooper
DeJean. Did we just become best friends?
Yep.
All right. So Cooper DeJean.
Get the samurai sword out.
Here's the thing about Cooper DeJean is I think we need to reevaluate players with return skills. That is back in play in the NFL, and shouldn't be undervalued. It's a big deal.
Well, yeah, I've had that in my mind ever since we heard that was a new rule in the league. I think the next day or whenever the news broke, we did this. I was doing a show. I don't think you were in, and I said this just made Cooper DeJean a lot more valuable in the draft, and I already liked him at 29. I've seen a bunch of mock drafts where he goes higher than 29, and I think this is the number one reason because he's more than just this perhaps lockdown cover corner. He didn't give up a touchdown at all last year. In fairness, Iowa didn't give up many touchdowns last year.
No, they did not.
Defensive whole, they were really good, but he's got that versatility the Lions love of safety, corner, and now you throw in the return game. There's a lot to like with him, and it's not just the Lions going to like that. Who doesn't like versatility in the NFL? So I think that's a name that might be moving up draft charts and might be the third corner taken, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least if the Lions moved up to secure Cooper DeJean.
All right, so those are the names that we think might be in play here for the Lions with the report that Albert Breer is out there saying the Lions are amongst the teams trying to move up. Kang, your 2 cents on this report and who they might be targeting. Do you think there's merit to this potentially?
I think there's absolute merit. Brad Holmes and the crew he has with him, they're more unpredictable, I feel personally, than other front offices because they don't care about position. They really don't. I truly, maybe I'm naive, Doug, and maybe I'm dumb, but I'm like you. I've been reprogrammed. I believe Brad Holmes when he tells us they just draft the best football player for their team, and I almost throw out position. But with Albert Breer saying edge and cornerback, now they have to go back and get that football player that happens to play those positions. Yeah, I agree with the accuracy of that report. Versus a guy edge-wise I would look at for the Lions targeting. And cornerback, I think it's Arnold or Mitchell. The DeJean, I like your guys' call on that. I don't think they'd move up for him. I think it'd be between the two corners. And for the edge, I think it's Verse.
Jared Verse is interesting because I'm not quite sure why at the beginning of the process, he was considered top 10. Now he's not. And I feel like he'd be a total steal if he can slip to them at 29. I doubt he will, but then again, somebody's going to be on the board that we don't expect it, so why not be one of the guys that can help us the most?
Oh, I think it'd be a tremendous steal if he's there. I think if there's any apprehension, it might just be lack of film against top-notch opponents because he was a transfer to Florida State from one of the smaller schools.
Albany.
There you go.
Yes.
That's pretty small. So, I mean, you're not looking at too much film from Albany. I wouldn't. I'd be looking at film with him at Florida State.
Yeah.
You're limited with that.
I mean, I think that certainly they saw him play this year, but he doesn't have the depth of Division I tape. It's kind of like JJ. You see it and it's there. You just don't have the volume of it in terms of the number of plays.